Hello, everybody, and welcome to Module 4 Ethical Decision Making in a Political Environment. Decision making is at the heart of public administration and involves efforts to change some existing situation or resolve an unsatisfactory condition. It also involves the expenditure of resources. Some decisions are routine, whereas others may be more complex and require greater time and mental effort. It is critical for decision makers not to confuse routine and non routine choices and to apply the proper analytical tools to facilitate decision making. There is considerable controversy over how to make decisions, especially in the public sector where resources are limited and the consequences of decisions may affect a substantial number of people. So, how do public managers make decisions, right? And so, you've read a lot about various models this week that have been used, right, over the past few decades to assist public managers in making decisions, right? And so, one is rational decision making. And the rational approach is an important skill to possess, especially in the public sector, right? And so, as you read this week, the rational approach is quantitative and derived from traditional economic theories, and the rational decision making process involves careful methodological steps. The more carefully and strictly these steps are followed, we know that the more rational the process is. And so, let's take a closer look at each step, right? And so, step one is identify the problem, right? And so the first step in the rational choice model is really trying to figure out what on earth the problem is, right? And though this starting place might seem rather obvious, a failure to identify the problem clearly can derail the entire process, right? It can sometimes require serious thought to find the central issue that must be addressed. Step two is you need to establish some sort of decision criteria, right? And in this step, the decision maker needs to determine what is relevant in making the decision. And this step will bring the decision makers and any other key stakeholders' interests, values, and preferences into the process. Next is you need to weigh decision criteria, right? And so, because the criteria identified will seldom be equally important, you will need to weigh the criteria to create the correct priority in the decision, right? And so, the next step, step four, is generate alternatives, right? And so, once you have identified the issue and gathered relevant information, now it is time to list potential options, right, for how to decide what to do. Right, and some of those alternatives will be common and fairly obvious options, but it's often helpful to be creative and name unusual solutions as well when trying to generate alternatives to address a problem. And again, as public managers, right, and as future public managers, there'll be various problems you'll be addressing, especially at the local level in the communities that you serve. And they can range from providing affordable health care to providing affordable housing, right? Or to even how do you provide street cleaning services or how do you adequately plow streets after it snows. So, again, these are steps that you can definitely use in your career, future career in public service. So next, after you generate alternatives, it's important to evaluate the alternatives, right? And so you need to weigh them against each other. So after creating a list of possible alternatives, each alternative can be evaluated, right? So which choice is most desirable and why, right? Consider, are all the options equally feasible or are some unrealistic or impossible? Right, and so now during this step is really important to identify both the merits and the challenges in each of the possible solutions. Now moving to step six. Step six essentially is select the best alternative, right? And so, after a careful evaluation of alternatives, you must choose a solution, which often can be very difficult, right? And so, especially if you are presented with multiple alternatives, right? And so, in this step, it's important for you to clearly state your decision, so to avoid confusion or uncertainty. All right, and the solution might be one of the particular options that was initially listed. It could be an adaptation of one of those options, or a combination of different aspects from multiple suggestions. And so, and it is also possible that an entirely new solution will arise during the evaluation process. So, we've talked about the rational choice model, and now I want to talk to you about two other models, and that is incrementalism and also mixed scanning. And both have been proposed as alternatives to the rational model, right? And so the incremental model, right, instead of making one huge leap towards solving a problem, the incremental model breaks down the decision making process into small steps, right? And so the process of then moving between the steps is known as a muddling through. And you'll be reading an article about this this week. And muddling through is based on the combination of experience, intuition, guessing, and using different techniques. And this model was developed by Charles Lindblom, right? And so in this process, right, in the incremental model, a small number of alternatives and consequences are considered at each stage of the decision making process. And as a result, the cost of making a decision are minimized, right? And so, as each step is proposed, only a small change is made, and often the immediate effect is minimal and usually not disruptive. Now, thinking about mixed scanning as a tool in the decision making process, incremental and rational comprehensive decision making has been found to have flaws, which is why many have argued for incremental and mixed scanning as techniques in the decision making process. Sociologists have spent a lot of time developing mixed scanning and adding to our theoretical understanding of it as we examine it in public administration. And so, essentially, mixed scanning decision making incorporates both incremental and fundamental decisions. And partially, mixed scanning can utilize a broad based analysis, and it can also use in depth analysis in some instances. One intriguing component of mixed scanning is the method that considers the different capacities of individuals towards decision making. Right, and so we've gone over three models, and there are lots of other models that you'll learn about in the public administration program, especially when you take policy analysis and you take other public policy courses in this program. And many will mention these approaches, and others will talk more about the garbage can method in terms of how policymakers often make decisions. Right, and so again, we're just going to focus on these three for now. And if you have any more questions about this week's lecture or slides, feel free to send me an email or give me a phone call. I hope you all are having a great week, and I'll see you next week in Module 5.